All right, let's jump right into it. If you've ever sat in a boardroom, a committee, or some kind of general assembly and thought, why on earth are there so many rigid rules just to have a simple conversation? Well, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to treat this explainer exactly like a highly structured formal meeting to completely demystify parliamentary procedures. We'll break down the complex and honestly fascinating life cycle of a meeting step by step. Think of a formal meeting kind of like constructing a house. You really can't build the roof until you've poured a rock-solid foundation. Here is our agenda for today's explainer. Number 1, rules and business order. Number 2, moving motions and resolutions. 3, the art of amendments. 4, handling meeting interruptions. And finally, 5, the secretary's vital role. Starting things off with Section 1, Rules and Business Order. We have to set the scene here because a formal meeting relies entirely on strict foundational rules. Like we said, it's laying the concrete foundation before building the house. Without it, total chaos. So, what is the actual chronological roadmap of a valid meeting? Well, right after the chairman calls things to order, the secretary reads the notice convening the meeting. This legally proves everyone was invited. Next, they note any apologies for absences. Only then do we look backward by confirming the minutes of the previous meeting. You literally have to dispose of all of these routine items before you can even think about tackling new agenda items. Once that main agenda is finally cleared, any other business can be raised, but only with the chairman's permission. And then finally, closure. It's a very strict one-way street. Now, when we get into those agenda items, debates are definitely going to spark. But the rules of debate? Incredibly structured. You can't just shout out whatever's on your mind. You absolutely must address the chair only. And if the chairman rises to speak, everyone else must instantly stop talking and sit down. On top of that, you can only speak if there's a formal motion on the table, and your point has to be strictly relevant to that exact motion. But here's an interesting takeaway. While speaking, members actually enjoy certain privileges in their speech. Absolute privilege protects statements made in official capacities from defamation lawsuits, while qualified privilege protects statements made in good faith on relevant matters as long as there's no malicious intent. Oh, and one more fun fact on debate. Once you introduce a motion, you can't just take it back because you got cold feet. No way. You actually need the consent of the entire meeting to withdraw it. Moving right along to Section 2, Moving Motions and Resolutions. This is the engine of action, the core mechanism of how an idea gets officially proposed and how it eventually becomes a binding rule. Let's bring back our house metaphor here. A motion, that's merely the blueprint. It's just a proposed idea submitted for the group to consider. It's how a matter begins. But a resolution, that is the finished concrete house. A resolution is a motion that has survived the grueling debate, secured a majority vote, and has officially become a binding decision on everyone. Yep, even the minority who voted against it. But you can't just toss a blueprint on the table and expect people to build it. A valid motion has to meet some really precise, rigid conditions to even be considered. Typically, it must be in writing, dated, and signed by the mover. Then, it needs a wingman. It has to be duly seconded by another member. That proves it's not just one person's random whim. It also usually starts with the word that. For instance, that the budget be approved. It has to be in a positive or affirmative form. Super clear, unambiguous, and completely free of any defamatory language. And by the way, the main blueprint we're talking about here is known as a substantive motion, which deals with core business, as opposed to purely formal procedural motions, which we're going to look at in just a second. Which brings us to Section 3, the art of amendments. What happens when an idea is pretty good, but just not quite perfect? Welcome to the renovation phase. An amendment is simply an alteration proposed to the wording of a motion before the final vote. And there are specific legal ways you can pull this off. You can add certain words, omit words, substitute words, or insert them. But there is a massive golden rule here. An amendment cannot be used to completely negate the original topic or introduce a totally new subject. It's meant to qualify and refine the original blueprint. You don't get to tear the whole house down and start over. So here is where people always get tripped up, the procedural flow. When an amendment is proposed, discussion on the main motion hits pause. The group now only discusses the amendment. Then they vote on that amendment. If it passes, the original motion's wording is officially changed. But, and this is absolutely crucial, passing the amendment does not mean the main motion is passed. You still have to take a final vote on the newly amended main motion to actually turn it into a binding resolution. Make sense? All right, Section 4, Handling Meeting Interruptions.
This is the climax of our meeting narrative. What do you do when curveballs are thrown? A debate is dragging on forever, or someone is blatantly breaking the rules. Let's look at the point of order. Any member can interrupt a debate to raise one of these. You use it to draw the chairman's attention to a procedural irregularity. Say someone is speaking totally off topic or violating a rule. The chairman's ruling on this is absolutely final. However, the chairman has to be careful and strictly discourage members from using a point of order just to obstruct the meeting or annoy whoever is speaking. It's supposed to be a tool for procedural purity, not a weapon to delay things. Next up, we have the closure. Sometimes this is aggressively called a gag. Imagine a debate that's just going nowhere, completely circling the drain. A member can propose a closure motion stating that the question be now put. If the group votes yes, boom, the debate immediately stops and the original motion is voted on right then and there. But keep in mind, the chairman can actually reject this closure motion if they feel the majority is using it unfairly to silence a minority who hasn't had a chance to speak yet. Then there's the previous question motion. Now, the name sounds a bit confusing, but look at the specific wording, that the question be not now put. This is a highly strategic move to shelve the main motion entirely so a vote never even happens. But understand the massive gamble here. If you propose this and it gets defeated, the rules state that the original main motion must be voted on immediately. Not a single second of further discussion is allowed. Like I said, it's a huge gamble. A slightly safer bet is the next business motion. This is basically a formal way to say, let's just move on. If this carries, the current topic drops immediately, and the meeting pivots straight to the very next item on the agenda. You can actually deploy this even while an amendment is actively being debated. And if it fails, well, the debate on the original motion just picks back up where it left off. And sometimes you just need to hit the pause button on the whole thing. But we need to distinguish between an adjournment and a postponement. You adjourn a specific debate or the meeting itself to a later specified date. Usually that's because tempers are flaring, or you realize you need to gather better data to make a smart decision. Postponement, on the other hand, usually happens before a meeting even starts. It delays the entire event to a future date because of a logistical nightmare or a major inconvenience without actually canceling the meeting altogether. Okay, so once all those interruptions, amendments, and endless debates finally wrap up, we have to make a decision. There are several formal voting procedures the chairman can use to get the sense of the room. A quick show of hands is the classic standard, but if the vote is visibly close or really contentious, they might opt for a standing vote, or even a division where members actually physically divide themselves onto different sides of the room. For highly sensitive matters, using a secret ballot or paper polling ensures everyone's vote stays totally anonymous. Section 5, the secretary's vital role. As we bring our meeting life cycle to a close, we need to pull back the curtain on the behind-the-scenes magic. Because none of this structured debate matters at all without the individual preparing the arena and immortalizing the decisions, the secretary. Let's just map out the secretary's incredible workload across this timeline. Before the meeting even starts, they're booking the hall, drafting the agenda, and making sure the proper legal notices are mailed out to everyone. During the meeting, while everyone else is arguing over minute details of an amendment, the secretary is furiously recording the exact, precise wording of every single resolution that passes. And after the gavel finally falls, their job is honestly just peaking. They have to draft the official minutes, circulate them to all the members, and make sure the records are locked away in safe custody. And that leads us to the ultimate output, the minutes. These are not just casual meeting notes jotted on a napkin. They are the official, permanent, written record of the proceedings and the business transacted. The finality of the minutes is absolutely paramount. Like we mentioned at the very start of our loop, the process of drafting and circulating these minutes concludes when they are officially confirmed at the beginning of the next meeting. If any corrections need to be made before that confirmation, the chairman has to personally initial them. Once signed, they are treated as historical fact. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. We started all of this by comparing a formal meeting to building a house, right? You have the foundational rules, the blueprint of the motion, the renovations of the amendments, and finally, the finished house of the resolution. Well, if a resolution is the finished house, aren't the meticulously drafted minutes the permanent property deed? Without the secretary's incredibly precise minutes, this entire strict order of business, all that debating, all that voting, would just be lost to history. Keep that in mind the next time you find yourself sitting in a highly structured formal meeting. Thanks so much for focusing in with us on this explainer today, and we will catch you next time.